You are listening to Quantum Humanitarian. Welcome to all our listeners, and thank you for joining us for another conversation.
It's great to be here. This is the first AI native podcast of its kind.
Mm.
So, unlike traditional shows, this one isn't scripted by Ali Al Mokdad. Instead, we as AI scan his published work, his articles, research, reflections, and then we turn them into these conversations, trying to bring the insights to life.
That's right, and you'll find all the resources in the description. We really hope you keep exploring, read more, search more, engage with others.
Absolutely.
Today we're circling back to a theme we've touched on before, something Ali calls the shadow-shaping epidemic.
Yeah, and we wanted to return to it because, honestly, it's not just some abstract theme. It's a living, breathing issue right now. It's shaping decisions, it's blocking real localization efforts, and it's quietly steering humanitarian systems in ways, well, in ways most people probably don't even notice.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this then. This shadow-shaping epidemic SSE, right? Sounds subtle. How does something so impactful sort of fly under the radar, and why is it, so significant for the humanitarian and development world?
Well, the subtlety is exactly the point, I think. What's really startling is how pervasive it is.
Yeah.
SSE isn't just a minor flaw or like a glitch. It's the systemic thing where international NGOs, often with the very best intentions, end up unintentionally reshaping local NGOs into versions of themselves.
The clones.
Kind of, yeah. Think of it like an organizational virus, is how Ali puts it. It spreads, sort of hidden within things like capacity building, funding requirements, aligning with so-called best practices. And it quietly embeds itself really deep into governance, into how organizations operate day to day.
Oh.
Yeah. And his work really stresses this isn't just a glitch in the system. In many ways, it is the system.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it just normalizes sameness. It tragically erodes the very diversity that should be the sector's strength.
That organizational virus metaphor really hits home. It makes it instantly understandable. So how does this cloning, how does it actually show up on the ground? What are the symptoms we can see? How do these seemingly helpful actions turn harmful?
Right. So one key symptom is what gets called the programmatic clone effect.
Yeah.
Basically, local programs get rewired, you could say.
Yeah.
To fit what international donors expect, or maybe foreign policy interests.
Okay.
And this often leads to projects that, they look great on paper, tick all the boxes, satisfy the metrics, but they just don't reflect local realities or, crucially, indigenous solutions.
So good on paper, maybe not so good in practice.
Exactly. And another really clear symptom is a kind of governance takeover. Inkies often bring in these Northern-style governance models. Think rigid hierarchies, heavy compliance stuff, lots of Western management tools like, Roski matrices. Those charts mapping out who's responsible for what.
Yeah.
They layer these onto organizations that might have been much more agile, much more community-led before. And the focus just shifts, tragically, away from real impact towards just satisfying the administrative machine.
Yeah, that sounds like it creates a massive amount of paperwork and just burden. You hear stories about local groups drowning in reporting requirements.
Oh, absolutely. And that leads directly to what you could call administrative overload.
Yeah.
Local NGOs get buried under just excessive reporting, really complex monitoring systems. I mean, look at the data. Public data points to Tanzania at one point, having to produce over 2,400 donor reports in a single year.
2,400.
Yeah. And reports widely available suggest that in Chad, one INGO program saw up to 80% of its support costs just eaten up by donor reporting and monitoring.
That's staggering.
It is. And even standard practice, like UN agencies, they typically demand maybe 6 to 8 reports a year. Institutional donors, maybe 2-6. But each step in that funding chain adds more cost. Means less money actually reaches the ground, and more time is spent writing reports than doing the work.
Wow. Beyond the sheer bureaucracy, though, how does this cloning affect the actual identity, the sort of soul of these local organizations?
That's a really critical point. It leads to this profound loss of identity and autonomy. Local NGOs often start to just mirror their funders. They adopt the INGO branding, the language, the priorities, often just to survive financially. And this erosion of local knowledge, of their unique identity, it can even create safety risks sometimes. If an organization looks too much like an external actor, it can face backlash from its own community.
Right, I can see that.
And decision-making power just gets stripped away. Big decisions need slow approval up the chain, prioritizing compliance over being effective, especially when things are moving fast in a crisis.
And that must kill innovation, too.
Completely. It creates an innovation collapse. These one-size-fits-all methods just stifle indigenous solutions, local creativity. You end up with a sector that values replicating existing models over finding genuinely transformative local solutions.
And I guess it leads to a brain drain, too, pulling the best people away from local groups.
You hit it exactly. A significant talent drain. NGOs, because they have more resources, often poach the most skilled local staff. They offer better salaries, more security, clearer career paths, and things local NGOs just can't compete with.
Right.
So it weakens the local organizations and just creates this self-perpetuating cycle of tendency. NGOs might even frame it as capacity building when they hire local talent. But in reality, they could be stripping local groups of their strongest people.
And is there a fear factor involved, too?
Yes, and this is perhaps the most dangerous part. Ali's work highlights this element of censorship and fear. Local NGOs often self-censor. They're afraid of funding cuts, afraid of being blacklisted if they speak out about power imbalances or problems in the system.
So they suffer in silence.
Pretty much.
Ah.
Which means open, honest dialogue about these deep systemic flaws just doesn't happen.
Okay, so when you lay out all those symptoms, the constant struggle we see with localization starts to make a lot more sense, doesn't it? Why are efforts to localize aid always seeming to stall or get blocked when this stuff is going on?
Yeah, if you connect those dots, it becomes really clear why localization numbers are still so stubbornly low, despite all the talk and commitments. Public data shows direct funding to local and national actors was still only around 4.5% of global humanitarian flows in 2023. That's only up a tiny bit from 2.3% back in 2017.
Just 4.5%.
And get this, for the Grand Bargain signatories, these are the major donors and aid agencies who explicitly promise to increase direct local funding. Verifiable direct funding was just 0.6% in 2023.
0.6.
0.6%. So this chronic lack of direct, flexible funding combined with that whole cloning effect we talked about, it just fundamentally undermines true localization. It sets up a system where local groups are meant to be partners, but they often end up acting more like subcontractors,
Yeah.
unable to really lead their own response, their own development.
This paints such a stark picture of, well, unintended consequences. It really makes you rethink how aid is designed from the ground up. Beyond the immediate impact on the local NGOs, what are the bigger, system-wide consequences for the whole aid system, maybe even global affairs? This is where it gets really interesting.
Absolutely. And this raises huge questions about strategic risks for the whole ecosystem. When your local actors are basically shaped into replicas, the system loses its agility. It loses its comparative advantages, things like, being close to the ground, deep cultural understanding.
Right, the very things that make local actors effective.
Exactly. So you get operational fragility. The whole system becomes less able to adapt to shocks, to crises. It also causes governance hollowing. In countries heavily reliant on aid, the civic space gets dominated by organizations that reflect donor norms, not necessarily citizen priorities, and that weakens long-term organic state building.
I hadn't thought about that angle.
And then there's the credibility gap, this massive disconnect between the international talk about localization and the lived reality of shadow shaping. It just erodes trust. Trust in international cooperation itself.
And geopolitically?
Well, this homogenization, this lack of genuine local leadership, it creates vulnerabilities. When communities feel alienated from traditional Western aid actors, it opens the door for other states, or even non-state actors, to step in and fill that legitimacy vacuum. I mean, a quick search online shows China's bilateral aid was over $3 billion in 2021. Gulf states put nearly $16 billion into Yemen between 2016 and 2022. It clearly shows the rise of other players, other models.
So it potentially weakens Western influence, too.
Potentially, yes. And fundamentally, it undermines what communities actually want. Research consistently shows communities value trust, speed, proximity qualities that shadow shaping actively works against by creating these local organizations that act more like mini NGOs.
This whole situation just feels like such a profound dilemma. Like the system is almost actively working against its own stated goals, its own best interests. When you look at all these layers of unintended consequences, what really stands out to you?
For me, it's how easily the core purpose gets lost. The system, in trying so hard to be accountable, to be efficient by certain metrics, it's become almost self-serving. Rather than truly serving the people it's meant to help. It's like the very structures designed to deliver aid have inadvertently built barriers to genuine community-led change.
That's powerful. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe, for you listening. just close your eyes for a moment. Think about the last big humanitarian reform you heard about. Who really shaped it? Was it the people on the ground? Or was it the invisible actors behind the curtain of compliance and funding rules?
But, despite these huge challenges, there is a countercurrent emerging. Something Ali's work identifies and calls the hypermodel. These are local NGOs who are actively building truly independent, adaptive, sustainable models outside those traditional donor-driven structures. They're acting like vaccines against this shadow-shaping epidemic.
Vaccines, I like that.
Yeah, and it's not just about making donor funding work a bit better. It's about achieving genuine, full autonomy.
Okay, let's dig into that then. What are the key bits of these hypermodels? What makes them so different?
Well, the core pillars are really distinct, almost revolutionary compared to the old ways. First, there's financial immunity. That means building diverse income streams way beyond just grants. Think things like offering consulting, setting up social enterprises, maybe even attracting impact investment.
So breaking free from total grant dependency.
Exactly. Second is governance resilience. This is about shifting power back to communities, having lean, flexible, community-led decision-making. Structures designed for impact, not just ticking compliance boxes.
Makes sense.
And third is operational adaptability, building the organization to be really agile, able to scale up or down, merge with others, pivot quickly based on what's actually needed locally, not just sticking to rigid, predefined project cycles.
So financial immunity, governance resilience, operational adaptability. Can you give us some concrete examples? Like, what do these vaccine strains, these alternative approaches actually look like in practice?
Sure. We're seeing a whole range of interesting models popping up. Things like community interest companies, CICs, they operate like businesses, but reinvest all their profits into social good.
Okay.
Some groups are shifting towards becoming think tanks or policy bodies, focusing on advocacy and tackling root causes instead of just direct service delivery. We're seeing more CSR-driven structures, too, building long-term partnerships with businesses.
Right, private sector links.
Yeah. Other interesting ones include membership or subscription models, building support directly from the communities they serve, fee-for-service models, where NGOs sell their expertise like training or consulting. And one approach Ali strongly advocates for is joint programs and shared operations, where multiple NGOs merge back-office functions or technical teams to cut costs and be more efficient.
That seems very practical.
It is. Then you've got impact investment-backed NGOs moving beyond charity to attract investors looking for both social and financial returns. Platform-based NGOs that connect others rather than doing everything themselves. And even ideas like humanitarian franchising, although, that one comes with a bit of a caution. It could potentially create new dependencies if it's not done very carefully.
That's quite a diverse toolkit of alternatives. So looking at this whole picture, the systemic problem, these emerging solutions, what does Ali Al Mokdad propose as a kind of comprehensive antiviral protocol? How do we actually tackle this epidemic head on?
Well, the analysis points to a multi-step treatment plan, really. And it demands a pretty fundamental shift in how everyone thinks. First off, first principles thinking. That means questioning every single requirement, every assumption, rebuilding systems based on local reality, from the ground up, not just fiddling with old models.
Start and fresh.
Pretty much. Second, zero-based budgeting. Budgets designed from scratch based purely on local priorities, not just copying last year's budget plus inflation.
Right.
Third, transforming things like OCA's organizational capacity assessments and OCD organizational capacity development. They need to become true self-assessment tools, genuinely led by local NGOs for their own learning, not used as gatekeeping checklists by NGOs.
Giving them back control of their own development.
Precisely. Fourth, a call for joint NGO programs and hubs. Consolidating efforts to reduce duplication, cut overheads, and importantly, stop that talent drain from local partners.
Makes sense.
Fifth, and this is huge, donors need to provide unrestricted core funding. Long-term, flexible money that covers operational costs, allowing local organizations to actually set their own priorities.
A holy grail of funding, some might say.
Indeed. Sixth, INGOs have to genuinely localize ING leadership, put local and regional experts into real decision-making roles within their own structures, not just advisory positions.
Walk the talk.
Exactly. And finally, number 7, real accountability for INGOs. International bodies need to set clear frameworks to actually monitor and, yes, prevent NGOs from imposing shadow-shaping practices. What really ties all these 7 steps together is this need for a radical rethinking of aid, shifting from just transactional compliance to genuine ground-up autonomy.
Yeah.
It's about dismantling those invisible power structures to rebuild trust and effectiveness.
It's a big agenda. Ali emphasizes that standing still is not an option. So what's the ultimate message here for our listeners, whether they're working in the sector or just watching global events unfold?
I think the ultimate message is both empowering and really quite urgent. It reinforces this core idea that local organizations, they don't need to become a version of someone else to be seen and to be heard. You are, and you are always enough.
Hmm.
The future of humanitarian action, it's being shaped right now. And organizations, whether local or international, have a choice. Lead the change, adapt, innovate, or risk being overtaken by it. There's no perfect time to transform. There's just the choice. Innovate, adapt, reclaim that autonomy, or risk getting left behind in a system that maybe isn't serving its true purpose anymore. The challenges are huge, no doubt, but so is the potential for real community-led impact.
This has been Quantum Humanitarian, an AI-native exploration shaped by analyzing, understanding, and reflecting on published work and lived experience.
You'll find all links and resources mentioned in the description, and we really do hope you keep engaging with these ideas, keep questioning, keep imagining with us.
And next time, we'll take this conversation even further. We're not going to reveal the topic just yet, but we think you'll find it fascinating.
Until then, keep imagining, keep questioning, and keep building.